When I think about the law, I always think about my father, who wasn't a lawyer, but I wonder what were those initial seeds that made me interested in being a lawyer. And we watched a lot of Perry Mason. And a thread in my career, both as a prosecutor and as a criminal defense lawyer on the private side, is investigative work. And so there's a thread that I trace back to my Perry Mason time with my father. My father very much encouraged me to go to law school, and he actually didn't graduate from college, but he had a brother who was a judge here in Connecticut, Roy Daly. And so he's very familiar with the law and thought it might be a good fit for me. So they were very pleased. I went to college at Dartmouth in New Hampshire, which I loved. I studied philosophy there. And I also did some work in the law, sort of testing whether this was going to be a good fit. I worked for a judge one summer. I also worked for a law firm in New York, and that kind of solidified my interest. And Georgetown was a particularly good law school for me, I thought, because it was in DC, a lot of connection to government work, which was something at the time that I was particularly interested in. My first job in the law was at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. It was my first summer after my first year, and I worked for a female prosecutor who was a wonderful person. I still have a little bit of a connection to her. And she tried case after case, and I sat right next to her in court. And I really got the bug and the interest in doing courtroom work and being a prosecutor. When I graduated from law school, I clerked for a judge, a federal judge in New York, in the Southern District of New York, Judge McMahon. And he was probably my first real mentor. He'd never had a female clerk before, but we became very close friends. And I worked for him, and he very much encouraged me to apply to the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York and be a federal prosecutor. I was very drawn to the courtroom, and when you're a prosecutor, you're given a lot of trial opportunities. And I tried a lot of cases. I was there for 12 years, tried all kinds of cases, murder cases, racketeering cases, organized crime cases, police brutality cases, narcotics cases, and learned a lot. It's a tremendous office. There are a lot of great lawyers there and a lot of very interesting work. I started in the U.S. Attorney's Office in 1985. And at the time, there weren't a lot of female prosecutors. There were a number, certainly wasn't the only one, but most of the people we worked with were men. The agents, the police officers, the cooperating witnesses, but there were a number of very talented women there as well, some who'd been there for quite a while and some were brand new like me. And breaking into it was not that hard in the sense that people were very supportive. And I think over time, most of my mentors and many of the people that were people that I learned from and people that supported me were actually men, because there were a lot more men in the field at that time. There were a number of people in the U.S. Attorney's Office and the SDNY who were just tremendous lawyers, brilliant writers, brilliant thinkers, great senses of humor. And I listened to them and learned a tremendous amount from them. And I still look up to them these many years later. And I think one thing to remember when you're a young lawyer is most lawyers are very happy to be mentors. They're very happy to share their experiences, to give you ideas, to guide you. So don't be tentative about seeking people out. I really encourage people to reach out to people that they respect and they think they might have a connection to. And as I say, I mentor a number of people and I get a lot of joy and satisfaction out of doing that. I was in the Southern District for 12 years. I had 3 sons and 4 years during that time, so it was quite a busy time. And my last 7 years, I worked in the branch office in White Plains, commuting to White Plains. I'd been running that office, managing a group of about 15 lawyers, and it was time for a change. So I decided to end my career as a federal prosecutor in New York. We were living in Connecticut at the time, and my husband and I actually started our own law firm, Daly and Pavlise. Most of our clients didn't even know we were married. And we focused on white-collar criminal defense work, mostly representing individuals and navigating them through the criminal process in federal court. I also worked as a monitor for Con Ed, and my husband did some civil work. So we had a very good run, Our office was in Southport, Connecticut, little office in Southport, but we did work in Connecticut and New York and other parts of the country. And that was about a 10-year run. And then I had an opportunity to go back into the government in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Connecticut. I joined the U.S. Attorney's Office having been out of government for over 10 years, and I was the first assistant, really the deputy, the number 2 in the office. And that office is about 75 lawyers, and they're responsible for all federal criminal prosecutions in the state, as well as some civil representations as well of the government. So I was the first assistant for 3 years. I got a call from my boss at the time, the U.S. Attorney, David Fine. And David said, "I'm leaving, you're going to be the acting U.S. Attorney in 2 weeks." But in Connecticut, the acting U.S. Attorney had never become the presidentially appointed, Senate-confirmed U.S. Attorney. So it wasn't all clear that I was going to become the U.S. Attorney. But I was very fortunate. I think I was in the right place at the right time, and I ultimately became the U.S. Attorney in Connecticut. So when you become U.S. Attorney, you have an investiture, and it's this quite formal proceeding in a courtroom. And you invite all your friends and family, and lots of lawyers come, and all the judges sit up on the bench. And there are a number of people who speak on your behalf. And two of the things I did, because I wanted it to be quite personal to me. My parents are both gone, so unfortunately they weren't there. But I had one of my closest friends who's a beautiful singer sing right in the courtroom, and I think that's one of the first times that had happened, and that was very special for me. And then afterwards we had a celebration, and I had, among other things, rosé and pink cupcakes, because I wanted to make it clear that yes, I am a girl and I'm going to be the U.S. Attorney now. In addition to the traditional prosecutorial work, one thing that I emphasized and was very much encouraged by the Obama administration was community outreach, particularly communities who might not have real trust in law enforcement. We wanted to try to build those bridges, to try to generate more trust in law enforcement, and spent a lot of time with that and had some real success. One of the things that the U.S. Attorney does is help to set priorities. The assistant U.S. attorneys, the prosecutors, and the civil AUSAs, they do the real work, and you stand on their shoulders very much. So one of the primary things you want to do is make sure they have all the resources they need, and also decide how are you going to prioritize the work that we're going to do here. And one of the things we did is prioritize violent crime. Who are the groups and gangs responsible for shootings and homicides, and then try to craft cases around those violent gangs. And we had a lot of success in New Haven, and when I say we, I didn't do the laboring oar here, it was really a number of really terrific assistants. But the homicide rate went down over a 4-year period from 34 to about 11, which is a really radical decline, and we were very proud of that. We also did some good work in the white-collar area, securities area, some good corruption cases. We focused on child exploitation and sex trafficking, and we also did some environmental work. And all of those areas, I think, were important and interesting to the people that were working there and the communities that we served. It is a political appointment. So at the end of the Obama administration, I left the job having loved it, and I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what to do next. Spoke to a lot of people in Connecticut and New York, and I've ended up at a firm called Finn Dixon & Hurling. Very happy there, and we focus on white-collar work, securities work, internal investigations, and some civil litigation as well. I think the law has been a very good choice for me. I feel very fortunate that I ended up in a career which has brought me a lot of satisfaction and even happiness, and I feel very grateful for that. I think in many ways I was given opportunities because I was a woman. I think that as I grew in my career, people were looking for women and giving women responsibilities, giving women opportunities. So I think in many ways I benefited. Of course I have stories, we all do, when people have said things that weren't quite appropriate because I was a woman. But all in all, I think it's been an asset. I've always worked hard, and I do think life, looking back on your career and your life generally, I think, you know, there are a lot of competent people, there are a lot of hardworking people, and luck is part of it. And I think I have been very lucky.